What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Canes Insight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Happy Friday. A lot going on. Recruiting is popping. Sorry for the delay. Our producer, Peter Rees, had to take a very confidential call. He's always working the sources, trying to get the latest scoop that we haven't even reported yet, that he is digging, trying to get confirmation on. Well, trying to get clearance on, because that is what's going on here on the Canes Insight Podcast. First, I want to talk about some folks that know a little bit about confidentiality. That's Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
Good morning, D. Yeah, man. Apologize for the delay here. I've told you guys before, the way that these streams work, it's tough. It's either we go live and you guys have no idea, when it happens, or I set a time to kind of get you guys ready. And sometimes things pop up, get phone calls. D was also taking a call of his own. So we are working the phones over here. Obviously, the big news that broke last night, Shelton Henderson, Duke 5-star commit, signee. He has parted ways with Duke and has been released from his letter of intent, or the NLI, I guess, as it's dubbed now. And Miami expected to be very much in the mix here. But we also have football discussion as well today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about both of these kids that we're going to talk about, just in general, taking questions. Also, Carson Beck, some inflammatory quotes. I like what he's saying. Got Canes fans talking. I'm excited actually about what he said, the whole vibe of this article that came out from CBS Sports, going in depth on Miami spring practice with some pretty cool quotes, insightful stuff on where the team is, kind of their mentality. Coach Dawson, Coach Beck, Coach Crystal. Beck didn't even get quoted in the article. It was really Dawson, but Beck's the part of the article talking about Beck has generated some headlines, and we'll talk about that. But let's start with Shelton Henderson, man. I know we have football stuff to talk about, but this is a 5-star player, ranked number 21 on the composite, number 14 according to 247 Sports, 6'6", 220, from Bel Air High School, same high school as somebody we know, right? Pete? Jay Lucas, I believe, is a Bel Air grad that they're in Houston. So that's something to keep an eye on when you look at this recruitment. But anyway, Shelton Henderson was committed to Duke. Of course, Jay Lucas is primary recruiter.
He was signed. He was actually signed
to Duke. I'm sorry, and has now gotten out of his letter of intent. This happens in basketball more often than it happens in football. But this guy right here,
Dallas Wilson, just did this with Florida and Oregon recently.
That's true, but not as common. It happens in basketball more often. But when you look at this kid, Pete, 6'6", 220, much better ball handler than I expected when I really dove in on the tape. Super smart and great character from everything you hear about him. He's a Duke kid. So, you assume that there's a lot of character vetting on the front end. Kind of reminds me a little bit, Pete, of Justice Winslow. I know that's not your favorite player, but a really good college player, champion, played in the NBA a long time. And he's got,
from a physical standpoint, for sure. I think offensively, he might have more to his game offensively right now than Winslow had in the league.
Well, look, Winslow, another Houston product, who I think he's been compared to, not just by me, but by people in Houston. Winslow was always a good ball handler, right? Always a really smart player on offense. His weakness was he didn't have the biggest hands, so his finishing was kind of weak. Whereas I think with Henderson, he has stronger hands, so he's a better finisher around the basket than Winslow was, but really much more of a guard type of skill set than I thought going in. I thought he was going to be just a big, kind of like how, remember we talked about Daquan Jones before the show, as far talking about some of these 5-star recruits that Miami signed. I expected more of like a Daquan Jones type athletic player. This guy has a lot of game, and I think if Miami's able to get this done, I know you got reporting on this, this would be an instant impact.
Yeah, look, there's already crystal balls from I just saw from a Maryland insider for him to land in Miami. And honestly, as soon as the Jay Lucas news came out, the Duke message boards kind of all said Henderson's the one to watch for. Obviously, the speculation has been with the Boozers, the ties here in Miami, and the Columbus stuff. But the Duke fans, I think, for a while have kind of I don't know if expected, but have said if someone's gonna move, it'll be him. As we watch, the tape here, and again, you add him potentially to what he's already brought in, and it's a really, really nice piece. I had something else here that I was gonna bring up. And Christianville said he says Duke fans killing Jay Lucas in their message boards because of this. But look, a lot of fans said right away that this was a possibility. So I don't really understand Duke fans getting on him. This is a guy potentially, again, same high school, same hometown. So
yeah, and I think when you watch this guy, what jumps to me from a basketball, so look at the strength to push off there. Probably a foul, but I like the strength and the physicality.
Kyle says, "Can I be a fan later?" He was critical of the Jay Lucas hire, but
we'll let you back on the bandwagon.
No, man. Look, this is at the end of the day, Diaz. We'll continue breaking this player down, but you hire Jay Lucas. What did we say was going to be at the premium talent acquisition? And this is not a done deal yet. It looks like it's trending in that direction, but he's done what they said he was brought in to do.
Look at the physicality there too to finish. Now I want the Miami Heat to obviously I want the Miami Heat to win tonight and make the playoffs. But now I really want that pick next year so we can draft this kid because this kid's got Miami Heat written all over him. The way I guess. I got to check the timing of this when we have our pick again. But he just seems like that kind of player, just with his ability to play both sides.
Look at him initiate. Look at him like you said, as a ball handler, just like pressuring him. Not really. He's the best player on the floor, but this is a skill set you like to see, man. Look at him running the show in transition.
He's very laterally quick. Again, just watching. I was up way too late last night.
Christianville says he reminds me more of Paul George than Winslow.
It could be. Paul George wasn't as strong as this guy. Paul George maybe was a little smoother on offense, but we'll see. This guy's ball handling. There you see it. I really see this guy as a, even if he defends small forwards because of his size, I really see him more as a guard in terms of how he's
and
used.
Look at him. He's posting up a lot. So if he's playing shooting guard, he's going to get some mismatches, and the potential lineups, man, are starting to get very interesting. You add Timotej Malovic in the mix as a stretch guy, as a wing player. You have Malik Reneau, as we know, can play the 4 or the 5 even. So these are some versatile players that you'd be adding to the mix.
I love how he's just pushing guys off. He's fighting guys. He's clearly not afraid to be fit. That's the big difference between Winslow. I think I really see a lot of Winslow, but the hand strength is a major difference here. I don't see a spectacular. He's a very good athlete. I don't see somebody who's like his head's not at the rim level. He's not one of these like Daquan Jones who we talked about earlier. He's not that kind of jumper, but just the skill level is just, look at that handle, man. This guy is a real ball handler. You know what he kind of reminds me of when he attacks the basket? Not overall game necessarily, but just the way he scores and attacks. Do you remember Born Ready Lance Stevenson?
That's a very that's like my era of basketball with him and J.R. Smith. Like, are you kidding me? Like, Born Ready was unbelievable.
Yeah, so look, I'm not saying he's the whole package of the Born Ready. He had some strengths and some weaknesses.
Yeah, Born Ready had a bag on him.
But just the ball handling for being such a physically strong player, and the fact that he's not an above the rim. He can disrespect from D.
Dude, I have a Lance Stevenson Charlotte Hornets jersey.
Lance Stevenson disrespecting the guy playing the league.
I have to pull up old tweets from me when I'm talking about Lance Stevenson.
And maybe his all-around game is more than Lance Stevenson.
No, disrespect like that. It's disrespect meaning that like you're asking me, do I remember him?
Oh, of course. Okay. But I think the thing with him is when you look at the character stuff, and again, I don't know the kid. I'm just digging deep into the background. People are saying I watched a few interviews with him, watched him. Charles Davis did a little special on him. So I was up way too late last night studying this player because it seems like he's going to be a key part of this rebuild. The fact that he's competitive, he's physical, he wants to get better. Everybody loves him over there. So, and of course, Duke typically will vet a lot of character on the front end with their players. You feel very, very good. And think back to the press conference we had with Jay Lucas. He said, I want to protect Florida. I want to get local ties strengthened. Obviously bringing in, a lot of local coaches, right, to the fold. Bringing in some local players. Oh, there he is. What did he say?
Old tweet here from August 2014. I consider Lance Stevenson a role model of mine.
There you go, Pete. Born ready, Ariz. But what did Jay Lucas say in that press conference? That he wanted to strengthen the local ties of the program. I think between all the staff hires, between some of the players he's brought in, I think that's been established, right, Pete? But he also said, I want to get a defensive identity. And when you talk about, Uday, when you talk about True, when you talk about Trey Donaldson, the physicality he brings as a football playing kind of character, Dante Allen, physical, plays defense, and potentially Shelton Henderson, who's a clear two-way player, you have really improved the strength of your team, physical strength, and also the defensive acumen of your team. And I think that's something he said he was going to do. That was something that was clearly lacking last year. And we're seeing that come together a little bit here.
A-Rob asking for a WrestleMania prediction, D.
I think Cena and I think Punk would be my two main event winners. In the women's match, I like, let's say Io Sky to retain. And let's go with Charlotte over Tiffany Stratton. Those are my predictions right there.
The couple more basketball related things before we get into football. Man, we started with basketball today.
And this is a great player.
This is a top 15, top 20 player in the country.
Well, let's start the discussion, Pete, because I said this and I want to make sure I'm not being inflammatory. I remember when Darius Rice signed, and he was a tremendous recruit.
McDonald's All-American. Marcus just inducted into the Hall of Fame last night. The UM Hall of Fame.
Shout out to Darius Rice. And he was a very important player here. His games against UConn. I mean, he was a very key player. He deserves that honor. You think back to, like Marcus Barnes, Edwin Rio, some of the local hype that those guys had. Probably more local than national. Of course, Daquan Jones was our first 5-star in a while when we got him. Lonnie Walker was, I want to say, rated just around where Shelton Henderson was rated when we got him. And of course, Jaleel Bethea.
And Lonnie Walker was one of those guys who I think was getting more love in like mock drafts than the high school recruiting rankings too.
Still in the league too.
Yeah.
So all those, and then of course, Jaleel Bethea last year, which didn't work out like everybody hoped. I would say going in, when you look at the total package of skills and the pedigree, I'm not sure this guy's not the best guy we've ever signed. On paper.
Yeah, I mean, look, on paper, Bethea is rated higher than him. I'm with you in terms of like the skill set and the size. It's easier to look back on it now, because looking at Bethea last year, the hope was you got a top 10 player. If you can get a little bit of weight on him, his ability to score the basketball, which it wasn't long ago. It was a year ago now at this point, but coming out of these All-American practices, Bethea was getting top 5 pick buzz.
Yeah, number 7 overall prospect. I just checked.
So that's what I was saying. So like by the rankings, I think if you're saying on paper, I'm still gonna say Bethea. Like at this stage. Now, watching the player and watching and understanding how things translate to the college level, right? Which is what we care about. We're gonna have this guy for a year potentially. Then you could say that Henderson's definitely the more ready-made guy as a prospect. And historically, I think you could make the argument Daquan Jones athletically was a freak of nature, had some development to go in terms of his skill set. His shooting wasn't there, the ball handling, all that, but brought a ton of juice to the floor and was automatically just like a different athlete than anyone on the floor for Miami. But I think at total package, you could make that argument, yes, that Henderson would be the biggest or the best recruit they've ever gotten. Yeah, NBA ready, and I think that's his body is NBA ready, as Christianville says.
And Pete, this was not on air, but we had this conversation. Remember after the All-America game, it was last year. Remember, I came in, you weren't able to watch the game, and I said, Pete, I watched the All-America game. Bethea he's going to take more time.
I remember you said he was slight, was what you said.
He just seemed small, and it didn't seem like he was somebody that was going to just come in right away and make a huge impact in terms of like, you had to wonder about the role. Like, not that obviously we expected more than what we got during the season, but when I saw how small he was, I'm like, he's going to have to be more of a point guard. He's going to have to be more of a ball handler. Can he do that, et cetera? And of course, just for a million reasons, it didn't work out. He could still have a great career at Alabama. I really enjoyed interviewing him. I'm wishing him all the best. But I got to say, heading into And one more thing on Bethea, by the way, before we move off, he was not recruited by the Dukes necessarily, the UConns of the world, the top, programs as hard, I don't think, as Henderson. I know the rating was what it is, but correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, the teams that were after Bethea hard were not necessarily the top 5 programs in the country.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's accurate?
Yeah. I think that was a bit of a red flag if you were a fan kind of looking at it from the neutral perspective. Why we do it in football all the time, right? Well, who else has offered him? Why don't we're getting a kid from the state of Alabama? Why don't Alabama and Auburn want him? Those are the sort of questions that you hear, and you heard that with the Dukes and the Carolinas when it came to Bethea.
And I think he's gonna be great. And by the way, like I said, every time I dealt with him, great kid, and he has a ton of talent. All I'm saying is that if I'm being honest, and this is really not being kind of with hindsight, this kid, when you look at the size, when you look at the fact that he already has a very tight handle, his basketball IQ, and you have to watch a guy for a long time, I guess, to really feel it. But just watching some of the stuff he did at EYBL, he just has a feel for the game. He can move without the ball. He's smart. He makes smart passes. His competitiveness is there. You don't have to worry about the defensive ability, which is going to get him on the floor. So, man, this total package, and we're not even talking about what if he develops a mid-range game, right? What if he develops a shot? Those are the questions. I'm just talking about he's going to come in, defend wings.
Well, his role would be pretty distinct because you're not asking. I think he's a guy that in the beginning is playing a role. By the end, could be one of the top 2 to 3 players on the team.
Yeah, and I think he's going to handle the ball.
Yeah.
I really had a vision of a Daquan Jones. I did not think he was going to be as advanced ball handler as he is. I would not be surprised if by the end of this next season, if Shelton becomes a Cane, you're going to see him bringing the ball up consistently in crunch time and kind of running the show, because with his ability to get downhill at his strength levels, if he can make 70% of his free throws, he's going to be pretty tough to stop just going downhill and making plays. That's kind of, even if he's not the most like twitched up explosive guy, and he is a great athlete, but I mean, like he's not like, I don't know if he's like, I don't know who you compare, like a Jaylen Brown type athlete. I'm not like in terms of explosiveness, but just the ability to get downhill with his strength and then finish and having strong hands, I think is going to be a very potent weapon for this Miami team if they're about to bring him on board.
Kyle says you guys are acting like it's a done deal already. Is it? No, it's not a done deal, but this has been heavily reported since, I'm not going to say heavily, but heavily, I'm not going to say heavily reported, heavily rumored from the Duke side since Jay Lucas took this job. It's something we've mentioned on the show before. We've mentioned it on the message boards. Keep an eye out for it. So Miami just seems like the logical spot right now for him with all of these ties. It doesn't seem like there's much buzz anywhere else. And sometimes you got to like read where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think that's what this situation is right now.
Yeah, it's more than smoke.
That. Yeah, more than smoke.
Pete, I'll put you on the spot, Pete.
Yeah.
You're the number 1 Canes insider on basketball. No question. I think that's been proven. The only competition is your young apprentice, Trenton Breeze. That's how I see the situation. I think most would agree. You had Jay Lucas before anybody. You had Moran before anybody. You had, this interest with Shelton Henderson was reported pretty early, potentially if things developed as we expected them. Do you think the Shelton Henderson will be a Hurricane when it's all said and done?
I do. Yes.
That's all the people needed to hear.
Let's see what happens here. A couple more things to get to here on the basketball before we move on, D. One of them being another visitor in town this weekend. Talk about someone we've been on from the beginning. The Bosnian Bulldog, Harun Zedno, on his way to Miami. Look at this. I don't know if that's I wonder if that's a direct flight.
Indigo, what's that? That's an airline?
Apparently.
All right, man. Well, there he is. He's got the palm trees. Well, here's one thing about this one, Pete, because I'm glad this is still live. We'll see how it all shakes out. There's only so much resources, right? When you're talking about adding 5-star players, a whale potentially. The knock on Henderson is he's not really a shooter right now. The guards you brought in, we'll see. I don't know any of them. Any of them are known for their shooting. They can all make shots. I wouldn't say they're all. Any of those guys are shoot first kind of guards, like a Nigel Pack. Then Timothée seems like he's got a pretty good shot.
Yeah, I think he was 36% from 3 last year, and those guys, those percentages just continue to rise. I think this is something, just a side note. I think a lot of these guys with someone like real skill development coaches on staff, like a Moran, you're going to see some jumps like that we maybe haven't seen in the past.
Yeah, Timothée, I mean, I really like what he brings from a size perspective. He's a very good athlete for his size. It's starting to look right if you start adding some of these pieces. But Malik inside the Indiana transfer, he's much more of an inside scorer. He's not going to give you a lot from a shot making, 3-point shot perspective. And then Uday is a rim runner. So you do need, in my view, some pure shooting, like scares you shooting, right? A guy that's out there, has a total green light every time he's open to shoot, is chucking up shots enough that the defense has to really focus on him and respect him. And then you open up for some of these other guys, right? Because Henderson, he's living in the same area as Malik. He's living in the same area as Uday. The guards are going to get downhill. It's going to, even Timothée likes to slash a little bit. It's going to get a little crowded in the paint if you don't add another shooter.
Kane's Cats Heat 305 says, question of Pete and D Money, is Jay Lucas's NIL budget for 2025 season bigger than Coach L's NIL budget this past season? Look, I think there's two things with that. One, Coach L's his recruiting classes were ranked pretty high the last couple of years. So, and I've said this before, you don't get top 10 type classes like Coach L has recruited the last couple of years, had recruited the previous 2 seasons without a pretty strong NIL budget. But at the same token, I would imagine that Jay Lucas, who's a coach who was going to be coveted by other programs, as we said, Miami got out ahead of that one early. I would imagine that he would want a certain package in terms of NIL, and it probably wasn't the same as what it was last year. And it's like the salary cap in these sports. It goes up every year. These things are going to keep inflating until, of course, we have this settlement now, as we've talked about for a while, D. But yeah, I would imagine it's stronger than it previously was, but I don't think that it necessarily held L back because he was still bringing in some highly rated guys. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't think the problem with last year's team was money. I think the problem with last year's team was L just kind of not wanting to continue in this era and scrambling in the portal as opposed to coming with a plan. We've talked about this a million times, Pete, but you see it continue to show, which is Coach L last year got players and figured out the fit later and the identity later. Jay Lucas, we still have some pieces missing to make it all fit. We talked about the floor spacing. We got a lot of guys that play around the basket, but he said he wanted to get more physical. He said he wanted to get longer. He said he wanted to get stronger. He said he wanted to get better on defense, right? These are all things you heard on and off the record, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you got 3 tough as nails guards. You got a rim running defensive first center.
And it's like we talk about it in football, man. There's certain positions that aren't cheap. I don't think any of these guys are necessarily. These guys are all wanted commodities on the market.
Oh, no question. But I mean, it's a type of player. Every coach is going to say we care about defense. You're never going to hear a coach say we don't care about defense. We don't want to be good on that side of the ball. But if you're bringing in players that are score first players and are perimeter guys that can't keep guys in front of them and lack strength and length, it doesn't matter, right? So here he's saying he wants defense, and he's bringing in a Uday, which is obviously a defensive addition and a length and size addition. The guards all are way, to me, tougher, at least physically tougher, more physical, better defensively than what we've had the past couple of years. Since Wong left, I think that's fair to say, and since Bensley left. And then this guy, Henderson, is probably one of the top 2-way players in the class when you just from a pure defensive standpoint, with his lateral quickness, his size, his instincts. he's going to be one of the best defensive players in this class. So if you bring in Henderson, continue the way it's trending here with some of these targets, you're building a team that is built to play defense. They don't just say, hey, we want a defensive team. You're getting guys that have that mentality, have that toughness, and have the skill set to help you on that side of the ball.
Yeah. So D, wrapping things up on the basketball side, very sad news. Prayers up and condolences to the family of former Cane Dwayne Collins, as the Miami Herald reported, passed away from a suspected heart attack. Played for Miami from 2006 to 2010. One of my favorite players growing up, going to those games. Awesome big man, and killed Duke. A game that Miami won and stormed the court. He dominated that game. Was an awesome player for the Canes. Miami High, local guy. So really, really sad news, man.
Yeah, this was a heartbreaker. I mean, this guy was very hyped out of high school. You heard his name for a while just because of his size. He was very hard to miss. He was someone that Canes fans knew about before he enrolled in the program. Then gets on the floor, just your classic rim runner, great athlete. Dwight Howard was a very good player at the time, and I remember he was kind of like our version of Dwight Howard just because he was so broad, so strong. Very athletic. Ended up getting drafted in the second round because he was able to develop so much. Everybody that I never knew him and never met him, but people that know him and knew him and met him all said great things about him.
Gentle giant was how I've seen him described.
Yeah, man. So it's it's heartbreaking. That age with a family, it's just it's a heartbreak. There's no really other way to say it, but just from a Canes perspective, you look back on his career and appreciate him staying home, especially now in this era where it's about kind of bringing back the local community to the Miami Hurricane program. This is someone who did it, who played at Miami, stayed at Miami, got drafted as a Miami Hurricane, and and really contributed. I remember the big story was always trying to get him on the football team because he was just so strong, man. You could have seen him as a giant tackle in a different world, but he was a huge part of Miami basketball at the time. Someone Canes fans remember fondly, and our prayers are with his family and all his friends.
So the Duke game I referenced, he had 26 points and was 12 for 14 from the field with 7 rebounds and a 96-95 win over Duke. So, almost perfect from the field against Duke. Awesome performance.
Yeah, man. Kirschville talking about him and Eddie Rios. Again, these were, I just remember hearing about these guys for so many.
I remember these guys, Brian Asbury, the Dennis Clementes, that era of high school basketball down here. And, now we've seen where it is today. So, all right. Again, we send our prayers and condolences to the Collins family. Great Cane, and will never be forgotten at the U. So, moving along here to the football side. Obviously, we've done a lot of talk here. Almost 1,500 live, man. Appreciate the support. 30 minutes of basketball talking. We didn't lose you guys. So thank you. And for the people who've been waiting around for football, let's get into it. Hit that like and subscribe to the channel.
Absolutely. And by the way, big event coming here at the Miami Hurricane team store. Before I forget, because we're going to talk a lot about football, a lot about some young prospects. Pete, pull up the Miami Hurricane team store. 2 guys that I've been talking about all spring because they've shown quite a bit of potential. They will be at the Miami Hurricane team store. This is right across the street from the University of Miami, next to the Thesis Hotel, for an autograph signing tomorrow. And that is Malachi Toney and Dalen Upshaw. I'll get you the exact time right now of the event. But yeah, Malachi Toney and Dalen Upshaw, 2 young receivers who are really looking like building block type players for this receiving core. They'll have their first official kind of debut as Canes with the fans tomorrow at the team store. That is
technically it was a spring game.
Well, that was with the pads on. Now they're going to meet everybody. That is Saturday, April 19th, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Malachi Toney, Dalen Upshaw at the team store. So again, 1 o'clock Saturday, April 19th. That's tomorrow. That's right across the street from UM, next to the Thesis Hotel. Go meet Malachi Toney and Dalen Upshaw, and get autographs, pictures, the whole thing. It's great to see these guys too, especially before they become big stars, see them as they're experiencing the process, doing some of these things for the first time. I think that's always pretty cool. So Go ahead and meet those guys. Got sale 30% off headwear at the team store. If you use promo code Insight20, get 20% off your first item. That's online or at the store. So always remember, Insight20, Miami Hurricane team store. So, speaking of Malachi Tony, before we even get into this recruiting stuff, Pete, I want to get into this part. CBS Sports wrote a story about Miami Hurricane football. They were there for spring. Brandon Marcello was there, talking to Cristobal, talking to Shannon Dawson.
He was like on the field with them during the game.
Talking to Dennis Smith, and a lot of interesting tidbits, Pete. So one of the big tidbits, we're talking about Malachi Tony, right? Malachi Tony, a lot of praise for him. But to me, what jumped out was this quote. I'll pull it up right here from Carson Beck. And it's actually not from him directly. This is from Shannon Dawson. I don't know if this is actually like a quote that he said, that Carson Beck said, more, or maybe just Dawson kind of describing his mentality. But the question,
that's how I took it, honestly.
So this is really a Dawson quote.
I'm going to pull the quote up now.
Yeah, this is really a Dawson quote. So Shannon Dawson's talking about Carson Beck and the pressure he feels replacing Cam Ward. And what Dawson said is, that S word doesn't bother him. Even though filling Cam's shoes around here seems big, to him, it's like, dude, stop. I followed a guy that won 2 national championships. Then we won the SEC. This ain't nothing for me. Y'all got beat in the Pop-Tart Bowl. So I'm not saying Beck said that. This is Dawson kind of paraphrasing Beck's mindset. But I like this quote. I like this concept, which is, Beck really should not be coming in here like he's got something. He's got like a pressure that is going to be overwhelming to him. I mean, he's coming in here. He's supposed to be the guy that's been there before, right? So in other words, he's got to project that kind of confidence to his teammates saying, hey, I've been where you want to go. Let's go. I'm going to carry you. I'm going to help you get there, as opposed to coming in meek, like, man, I'm following the best quarterback that most of us have ever seen in a Miami uniform. This is tough. He's coming in there with the attitude of, I've been in the biggest games, bigger than this Notre Dame game that we're opening with. I'm not worried about it. I've been here. You watch me make plays and you guys follow behind, do your job. That's the impression I got from that quote. It's the impression I've been getting from just people talking about, is that he's very, very confident in what he can do and where he's been in his experience level coming in here as a 2021 signee, right? Or 2020. I mean, this guy's been around for a while. This is his 5th year of college. So his experience level is going to be huge for a team that has some youth, particularly wide receiver.
Yeah, and I've said this before, and don't take this the wrong way, but I think if you were a player on the Canes roster, some of them were not familiar with Cam Ward last year. But I'm sure once they saw his stuff, his clips, once he got on campus, it was easy. But people were not watching Washington State like that. More guys were aware of who Carson Beck is than they were necessarily Cam Ward coming in. Again, it was an easy sell when Ward came in, but I think Ward, although that is more his leadership style as it is, like, he needed to do that a little bit more. Beck is coming in there with that respect, which is, I think, kind of how Dawson is explaining it here.
Yeah, and confidence in himself. He knows he's been in these games. So if you've been in bigger games than the Notre Dame game is not going to startle you. Now, Cam Ward was interesting because he'd been in some big games, but Washington State, it wasn't the same kind of thing as Georgia as far as the expectations, but it didn't matter. I mean, Cam Ward is Cam Ward. He came into that Florida game cool as a cucumber, but I think Beck's actually played in more meaningful games. So he's definitely as prepared or more for that environment. It should not be a drop off in that respect. Obviously, Cam Ward is the best player in the country, best quarterback I've ever seen at UM. So to say that the performance is going to be the same, that's tough. But obviously, it doesn't seem like Carson Beck's that concerned about that pressure. He's focused on beating Notre Dame and showing people what he can do. And what I like about this whole thing with Beck is, the Lamborghini got all that attention. Obviously, had that incident with the theft. The girlfriend, Hannah, who, great athlete, great UM athlete. From his standpoint, that was the source of a lot of his attention, right? And he got criticized for that. That's all gone now. And people are talking about he's overpaid. Ryan Clark's saying ridiculous things on ESPN. If you're Carson Beck, there's a lot to prove, I think. Not to necessarily say, hey, I got to follow Cam Ward's shoes. Let's just say, hey, you've forgotten who I am. You've forgotten what I'm capable of doing. You forgot why I was projected as the number 1 overall pick. You forgot why I won all these games. So I think from his standpoint, you could see not only a veteran who's been around, but someone with a lot to prove. And I like that combination in a player, especially a player who's getting paid a lot. You want them to not just be happy to cash a check, but to kind of be angry. And you see that starting to build with Beck, with some of the stuff that's come at him unfairly in many respects.
Yep, agreed.
Some other stuff here from this article, which is interesting. Just in terms of what I just described, the social media, Dawson talked about that was really more, that's Hannah's thing. Beck obviously supported his girlfriend, but that was not something he really does on his own. So that was kind of a misconception now that they've been around him. Cristobal is saying they like that he has to deal with that adversity because it's just preparing him to be a pro. But, in general, I think the big takeaway from this story was a lot of excitement about the defense, talking about, you hear Heatherman say they're very much about getting a field, not that much different than Manny, maybe a more physical version of Manny's defense. They want these guys to play fast. Cristobal said what Guidry did last year really didn't fit necessarily what Miami should be about, particularly with the way the defensive ends were in tight, not being able to edge on those offensive tackles and use their athleticism. Mirabal said it was the most frustrating season he's been a part of in 19 years, just because of how it finished. And Heatherman talking about just the fact that, just use a quote here, our style is launch technique. We're not a read to react defense. It's not even stay in your gap. It's get reach, get vertical. Interesting comparison in this article, which I remember when the Hurricanes signed Greg Schiano as their defensive coordinator and the difference he made to a defense that had been very inconsistent to that point, to say the least. Butch brought in Schiano. That's when the defense became a dominant defense, which continued after he left. Heatherman's a Schiano guy. Schiano was at practice the other day. We saw him. So Cristobal in this article says the hiring of Heatherman reminds me so much of when we got Schiano, who's a mentor to Cristobal. So clearly that's what he's trying to replicate. And those of you guys in the chat or listening on the radio who remember in 1999 what this defense looked like when Schiano really started kind of fixing it up and developing a mentality and allowing some of the talent to prosper. That happens here. There's going to be a lot of happy Hurricane fans. I can tell you that.
Good morning, Yalaha Kane. Welcome. Appreciate everyone who's on with us now. Almost 1,700 live. Hit that like and subscribe to the channel. So, D, let's get into some of this recruiting stuff. Do you want to start with
the GPOAT? Appreciate you, Bert. I never heard that before. Subscribe, like, follow. Yes, please do, man. We appreciate everybody on the show. Over 1,600. Like and subscribe. We're on every day. Ask someone in the chat. They'll tell you. This is going to be the most exclusive, direct insider information, football, basketball, baseball you will get. Again, directly from the inside. If you don't hear from us, a lot of times it's because it's not time yet. So we'll give it to you as soon as we can get it. And it's pretty much always going to be before everybody else. So appreciate you, Bert. Like and subscribe. Kane's Cat said he was born in 1999, so he doesn't remember. Greg Schiano. So let's see here. Let's talk about potential flip candidate, which is going to be Devin Jackson, the safety from Orlando, player who we talked about these things. We tried to talk about these things earlier. This is a name that we first mentioned maybe 5 weeks ago in the bank. That's the article I write for CanesInsight.com. 7 million posts and counting. Sign up for free if you haven't yet. And I mentioned that Devin Jackson, who was committed to Florida at the time, was a potential flip candidate. Of course, Will Harris, defensive backs coach at Florida, he himself flipped to Miami before the spring. So follows that some of these recruits could potentially be flip candidates, and the name to keep an eye on. We said it back then a month ago, and we're saying it again now. Devin Jackson out of First Academy in that Orlando area. He just decommitted from Florida. So that's the first step in the process. I can confirm Miami is very much in this sweepstakes. This is a cornerback / safety. He can play both. We'll see where he fits best. But in terms of the recent Under Armour camp, his measurables, 6'2", 192 pounds, 4'5", 340. This is laser time 40. This is not, some coach putting a number on a huddle. This is legitimate, verified, standardized, 6'2", 192, 4'5", 340, 4.18 shuttle. Big time athlete. And you see here on the film, not elite competition, but this program's starting to produce some players. And you see he's physical. You see him here playing deep with the game sealing interception, playing the ball. Nice adjustment there. And these are some crunch time plays. But I think really with the profile with Devin Jackson, the physical tools, I think, are what jumps to the front of the line.
Good length. I mean, looks like, and you see him playing in the middle of the field right there as well. Look at that.
Yeah, I know he wants to get a chance at corner. Has speed.
He looks. I'm not gonna say too big for corner, but he looks like a big boy already.
It was like Xavier Lucas is about the same size. And I mean, I love the striking that this guy brings. Sometimes you get these fast guys that they don't have the hip flexibility to really get into ball carries as a tackler. This guy does have that. There you see him grab the ball, continues to make plays. When he tackles people, he strikes them, which shows that not only is he explosive, just moving around, he can explode through tackles. He can get low. You see a nice tackle right there. And obviously Will Harris knows this player, was a big part of recruiting him to Florida. So he's been thoroughly evaluated. The ball skills are good.
Skills are good, yeah.
For a guy that's so physically talented, sometimes those guys are stiff and they just test well. You see the football movements here like that. Question is just going to be, again, safety or corner. Here you see him. Maybe he's a nickel, right? Here you see him lined up inside, getting physical, and then getting around 6'2". He's got length. So it's going to be like, I'm not saying it's Xavier Lucas. Xavier Lucas probably runs a 4.3, but from a measurable standpoint, size, speed, verified times, he's closer to Xavier Lucas probably than anybody else we have.
Yeah. The size is what's really sticking out to me, though.
Yeah. And anyway, so look, obviously he hasn't committed to Miami. The flip's not complete, but the reason we told you about him a month ago is because Miami's pushing for a flip and he just decommitted. So he was on campus for spring practice. A lot of interest there. I can report confidently Miami is right in the mix for Devin Jackson, potential flip candidate. You signed a John Tavius Wyman, who you flipped from Georgia. Jalen Waters, who you flipped from Florida, same school you're trying to flip Devin Jackson from. So you're seeing Etheridge and Will Harris really work the Southeast. Etheridge originally from Auburn. I know he's had a stop in Houston. Will Harris just at Florida. You're seeing them work their recruiting regions and identify some of the top cornerbacks, defensive backs in the Southeast and try to flip them. So far, you got Waters, who's pretty elite. You got John Tavius Wyman, who's an incredible athlete from Georgia. And now potentially Devin Jackson to add to the fold. You already got Camden Portis, the 4-star nickel corner from Baltimore, Maryland. His dad is Clinton Portis. So this position is starting to really come together, I think. You get a Devin Jackson, kicks it up to another notch.
Who was the other recruiting thing that we had, D?
Well, first, let's talk about recruiting some croquetas with kimchi. I mean, it's Easter.
I don't know, D. We've had smoother transitions than that one.
Had to get it done. But listen, this is Easter weekend. Hope everybody has a blessed Good Friday here, and then through the weekend, Easter on Sunday, you're going to want to feed the family. Islas Canarias Express. Get it to go. You got all kinds of croquetas, 7 different types for all different types of consumers, whether you want gluten, you don't want gluten, you want the traditional, you want something a little newer, you don't want meat, whatever it is, they have you taken care of at Islas Canarias, the best croquetas in Miami, voted every single year, 40 plus years and counting, serving South Florida, and now right there in Dayland Mall in the dining pavilion. But yeah, grab something to go. Cuban sandwiches.
See the chef's favorite right there.
Yeah, there you go. The OG ham is usually the most popular, but they got loaded fries. Vaca frita loaded fries. You're only going to get that at Islas Canarias Express. The tostones preparadas. They got a ton of stuff here. If you're on the clock for Easter dinner, Easter brunch, whatever it is, or just you're hungry, Islas Canarias Express, the absolute best in the business.
Got a limonada frappe. Look at that. Got to try that one out.
Arab says he wants to send some. Rocco wants lunch with me.
D, I wanted to pull up let me see if I have it here. There was a tweet that I saw here from someone watching the show who said that the Canes are 200 to 1 to win a national championship in basketball next year. That they're thinking of sprinkling some money on it after all this news lately.
Hey, listen, they got a much better chance now than they did a week ago when they didn't have a team. So, they're working hard. Some questions here on Calvin Russell. Last I heard, again, I think Malachi Tony's success is helping with Calvin Russell. Those two are close. Syracuse, if you're a receiver and you're looking at Syracuse, their best receiver just transferred because the quarterback stunk. So if I'm Calvin Russell, Syracuse isn't looking as good to me right now. That's just me. Now, Syracuse might have more money to spend, but by the way, you just had Fran Brown screaming about how receivers are overpaid on a podcast. I don't know if you guys heard that. Fran Brown, and we talked about this on Group Chat Sports, me and Pete's show. We were talking about just college football in general. We did a short on this, Group Chat Sports. Go ahead and subscribe to that if you want to support me and Pete and get a more of a broad college football perspective on news and transactions. But Fran Brown was basically saying, Trevor Pena, we're not going to keep you. You want too much money. If I'm paying that much money for a receiver, I want Travis Hunter or Jeremiah Smith. If I'm Calvin Russell, I'm saying, well, their best receiver just left because the quarterback stunk and he wanted more money. And then Fran Brown's saying that I don't pay money to receivers. Does that sound like an appealing situation for a wide receiver from South Florida? It's cold too. And it's Syracuse. I don't think that bodes well for his recruitment. They were a big player. They have been a big player with Calvin Russell, but I think there's certain things shifting more in our direction there. That'll be a battle. With respect to Derek Cooper, the other question here from Brandon. Derek Cooper's got a lot of teams after him. Derek Cooper's an elite player. I think Miami will not sleep until Derek Cooper's a Cane. He is a high priority player, and they're going to recruit the heck out of him until the end. And because of the level of effort and investment that they have in this player and the fact that we're going to have such a great offensive line, it's a great situation for him to come in and run. I think we'll eventually get him. I don't know how we're going to get there, but I just know the will to get this guy is huge. And usually when Mario is that locked in on a player, he's able to get him. Doesn't always happen, but I think there's a great chance there. Look at Ghostface. It says, all about the year. Remember my very first time seeing them beating down Oklahoma for the national championship with Michael Irvin wearing number 47. Look at that. Memory lane. Ghostface. Ghostface, probably the best rapper, for my favorite rapper of my lifetime. Storytelling, just kind of inventing new ways to rap and use words on Supreme Clientele. An innovator. Pete, do you still listen to Wu-Tang? I know you had a very brief Wu-Tang phase.
It's not necessarily in the rotation. It's there. I've been listening to a lot of like 2015, 2018 Hood Rich Pablo Juan lately.
Okay.
But that's just my vibe as of late.
Pablo Juan.
Hood Rich Pablo Juan.
Where's he from?
Atlanta. He's locked up right now, but
all right. Free Pablo Juan.
Free Pablo Juan.
Oh, what do you do before I say that?
I don't think we should get into it.
All right. We'll table the free Pablo Juan. I'll have to do some more research on that.
You can. I'm still gonna be screaming it.
All right, man. Well, that's been a good show. We got potential flip from the Gators. We got Carson Beck hyping up the fan base and potentially the best recruit Miami has signed in basketball in many, many years, if they can get it done with Shelton Henderson. You heard Pete. He thinks it gets done. So appreciate everybody joining the show. Hope you guys have a great Easter weekend.
Show up to Mark Light this weekend.
There we go. Thank you. Well, let's get in there here. So they got 1,900 on right now. Like and subscribe, first of all. Number two, if you're in town, show up to Mark Light. You got Georgia Tech in the building. Best center fielder, maybe the best player in the country in Drew Burris for Georgia Tech. They're one of the best teams in the country. If Miami can take 2 out of 3 there, this team is poised to make a run at a regional, at a 500 or better ACC record, and at a major improvement over last year. They're trending in the right direction lately. You cannot go out there and get beat up by Georgia Tech. They're a great team. It's going to be a tough competition, but you got to go up there and perform. You got Griffin Hugas on the mound today. To me, one of the best pitchers in the ACC. Certainly the best pitcher on the Miami Hurricanes this season. And let's see how it goes. You're battling some injuries. Todd Hudson, Derek Williams. We'll see if he's able to play through his injury. But you're down. You're down some outfielders. You're down some bats. But you still got Daniel Cuvée. You still got Jake Ogden. And you got a chance to really make noise. So shout out to the Canes baseball team. Interviewed Jake Ogden yesterday for Storm Sessions. That should be coming out potentially today. So keep an eye on that on the official Miami Hurricanes channel. It's my interview show for the University of Miami. Just follow the official Canes All Access YouTube or Storm Sessions on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You'll get my interview with Jake Ogden. Should be dropping today, plus my interviews for going back a year, going back to Cam Ward when he first got here. So we'll keep that program running. Enjoy your weekend with your families. Go Canes.
Go Canes.